Our whole concept of productivity was built for production environments, assembly lines, factories, places where more output, faster, was the only measure that mattered. But most of us today aren't in those environments. So what does productivity actually look like for the rest of us? Today, we're going to reframe it and take a few cues from one of nature's most surprisingly sophisticated creatures, the octopus. Hey, it's Rachel Cooke, your modern mentor. I'm the founder of Lead Above Noise, where we help leaders rethink how the work actually gets done so that results stay strong and people stay well and engaged in the process. If your team is ready to work smarter and build something more sustainable, I'd love to come speak at your next offsite or event. Reach out at leadabovenoise.com/connect. Okay, on to today. So I have these close friends who run a day camp. And a huge part of their work every year is hiring all the counselors and lifeguards it takes to run the show. Many of these hires are young adults, late teens, early 20s, and every year my friends have a few banger stories to share about the parents of these counselors and lifeguards. Parents who show up with their adult kids for the interview or who call my friends to request a day off on behalf of the staff member. Listen, parenting is hard, and my point is not to judge. These parents have only the best of intentions. They're really trying to support their kids and help them land great jobs. But if we're honest, their showing up like this is doing a disservice to the young adults who are missing out on the chance to learn to advocate for themselves. So what does this have to do with productivity? Well, a lot, actually. Like those well-meaning parents, we too are often making choices designed to serve us that are actually, in the end, working against us. We're robbing ourselves of opportunities to work smarter, and that may be the truest key to productivity. I recently came across this concept in a Harvard Business Review piece published by Jana Werner and Phil LeBrun called Become an Octopus Organization. The octopus is genuinely a fascinating creature. Its arms have kind of a distributed intelligence, and each one can sense and respond and act independently without waiting for the central brain to weigh in. The animal doesn't overthink or overconsult. It senses and moves. Werner and LeBrun use it as a model for how organizations could operate. Most companies, they argue, are more like Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, kind of rigid and slow, waiting for someone else to oil the joints before they can move. Their article is about shifting towards something more fluid and responsive. And I'd love to bring that same lens to us as individuals, because I'm noticing a handful of personal antipatterns, these things that we do on purpose and with intention, but that are actually costing us more than they're serving us. Werner and LeBrun define antipatterns as conditioned formulaic responses that, despite good intentions, consistently make things worse. They're not bad habits born of carelessness, they're choices we're making, and that we maybe need to start questioning. I'd love to share today some of the antipatterns I'm seeing that I think are crushing our productivity. Maybe one of these is yours. The first is over-polishing. You know the person, maybe you are the person, who answers the classic interview question, "Tell me about your biggest flaw," with something like, "Ugh, I'm just such a perfectionist." As if it's a bad thing everyone knows is secretly a good thing. But it turns out, it actually really is a bad thing. Doing a 9th round of reviews or tweaks or edits is so often sucking the productivity away from round 2 of creating something new. Over-polishing isn't carelessness. It's not a mistake. It's a choice we've made that's designed to protect us from making a mistake. So don't apologize for it, but do question it when you notice it. Momentum and efficiency are often worth more than perfection these days. The octopus doesn't refine its reach before it reaches. It just reaches. Okay, next up is over-consensus building. So you want to be a team player. You want to know you've got the full support of your peers and your partners, and that impulse is real, and it comes from a good place. Evolution says we want to stay part of the pack. It's protective. But also, sometimes, it becomes an anti-pattern that costs us some real time. When an important decision needs to be made, ask yourself not, has everyone had a chance to weigh in, but rather, have I captured the most crucial, most informed, and most expert perspectives? Have I consulted the most relevant stakeholders? Once the answer to those questions is yes, the rest of the people in your orbit just need to know the decision has been made and what its impacts are. Will you occasionally disappoint someone who wished they'd been in the room? Yeah, maybe. But productivity today demands that we take some risks. An octopus doesn't pull the 7 other octopi before it acts. The next one is overlearning. Sometimes it's called procrastinating, and it's exactly what it sounds like. To be clear, I'm not talking about flying planes or performing surgery. Please know everything there is to know in those cases, and then some. I'm talking about skills that don't require licensing. Things like using AI or copywriting, editing video, running focus groups. Yes, learning these things is valuable, but too many of us learn for too long, often because somewhere underneath, we're afraid to try. This anti-pattern is also designed to protect us from making mistakes. But one of the biggest mistakes we make today is waiting too long and losing momentum in the process. So practice learning in a more agile way. Consume a little and then practice. Experiment. When you hit a wall, learn a little bit more and then practice again. The journey will be messier. It will also be faster and more forward-moving. And finally, we've got overdoing. I know, you're thinking, didn't she just tell us to do more? And the answer is yes, but more of the right stuff. This one is for those of us who are, on some level, quietly addicted to our to-do lists, who like the feeling of having lots of things to do and then doing them without really sitting with the question of, are all of these little things actually essential? Are they all designed to deliver real impact? Or are they just things we've convinced ourselves we need to do? Feeling busy feels productive. It protects us from looking or feeling lazy. But sometimes busyness is actually disguising laziness, because the hardest work, the work that we often avoid, is figuring out what's actually going to move the needle. Maybe your team is chasing a new market, and the collective list includes heavy analysis, dozens of interviews, focus groups, consulting firms, on and on. But what if just a small handful of sharp conversations is the thing you need most to start making real progress, and the rest is just extra? Striving to land the biggest output with the minimum necessary input, this is the productivity game. The octopus doesn't deliberate over every possible reach. It senses what's close, what matters, and it moves. So which of these is yours? Is one of these anti-patterns costing you? Or is your version something a little different? I'd love to hear what resonated or what you choose to do about it. Join me next week for another great episode of Modern Mentor. Until then, visit my website at leadabovenoise.com. You can follow Modern Mentor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find and follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for listening and have a successful week. Modern Mentor is a quick and dirty tips podcast. Thanks to the QDT team. Audio engineer Dan Firebend. Director of podcasts Holly Hutchings. Ad operations specialist Morgan Christensen. Marketing manager Rebecca Sebastian. Marketing contractor Nat Hoops. And podcast associate Maram Engelheed.